Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, and welcome to Command Power, the show in which we discuss all things Magic the Gathering with a focus on Commander. And today we have an awesome new Commander deck for you. We are going to be talking about Myra the Magnificent, one of the most exciting new commanders from Unfinity, which is a set that I'm loving so far. I absolutely love this set. And she is one of the coolest commanders in there. Basically what she's going to do is she's going to open an attraction every time we cast an instant or sorcery. That by itself would be pretty cool, but then we can also pay X and exile an instant or sorcery from our graveyard, basically attached to an attraction that we own, and then whenever we visit that attraction, we're going to get to cast that spell for free. That's really awesome, and it can be pretty easily broken and lead to some crazy turns. We're going to go an even more fun route, and we're going to be playing a lot of cards that let us copy artifacts, so we can make more copies of our attractions and just get an absolute fairground full of attractions running. Should be awesome. So without further ado, let's get started. For our creatures, we are starting with Archmage Emeritus. This is a pretty good one, a no-brainer, because it's going to draw us a card whenever we cast an instant or sorcery or copy one. That's pretty good, and we have a few spells that copy themselves in this deck, so it should be pretty strong. Faraday is going to be pretty nice. We have a few ways to roll dice in the deck. If we roll a 10 or more, we're going to draw a card for each time that happens, so it's a pretty solid one in this deck that's going to draw us some cards. Very Trickster is going to make some flyers every time we roll a dice. We're guaranteed to roll one every turn with our attractions, so at the very least we're getting one flyer every turn. Goblin Electromancer is going to make all of our instants and sorceries cheaper, which is great. Monitor is going to open an attraction when it enters the battlefield, and then we can pay one once per turn to re-roll one of our dice. That's a pretty good ability tacked on that's going to guarantee we hit what we need to hit. Padim, Console of Innovation, is going to protect all of our attractions by giving them hexproof. We also have a couple of fairly expensive artifacts in the deck, so we might be able to occasionally draw some cards with him, but mostly it's just there for the protection. For extra, Metamorph can copy one of our high impact attractions, but it can also just copy anything else that's good on the board, so a very flexible card there. Pixie Guide is going to let us roll extra dice and choose the best result. That's great in this deck that has so many dice rolling effects. Replication Specialist is amazing in a Myra deck because every time you open one of those attractions for free with her, you're going to be able to pay an extra 2 and get a copy of it. 2 attractions for the price of 1 seems really good. It's particularly good with our cheap cantrips such as Gitaxian Probe or Ponder, which can be paid for next to nothing, and then you can just get an extra attraction with this. Stormkiln Artist is a classic one in any Spellslinger deck. We're going to be able to make a lot of treasure tokens with this. Veyran, Voice of Duality, is really good here. It's going to double all of our Myra triggers, and we have a bunch of triggers that trigger off of casting instants or sorceries, so that's going to be really nice. Will, Blade of Frontiers, is going to grow big in this deck, and he's also going to allow us to re-roll some dice. So both abilities are being used really well in this deck. Next up we have Vidalcan Squirrel Whacker, which is a good way to ensure we get the results we want. So basically we're going to store 2 results on it, and then we can exchange them with future D6 rolls. That's good to make sure our attractions get exactly what we need them to get. That's it for creatures. We only have a few in this deck, and we're moving on to sorceries now. Starting off with Blasphemous Act, which is a great way to clear the board, basically the best board wipe in red. Brass's Bounty is a really good one to be casting for free late game with Myra. It's going to let us create a lot of treasure tokens, which is going to fuel more nonsense for our deck. Quartermine is a nice way to recur stuff that's gone into the graveyard. We can also exile it with Myra attached to an attraction, and then we're going to recur stuff every time we roll that number, so it's very solid. Cone of Cold can be really good if we exile it with Myra and then visit that attraction. We can tap all of our opponent's creatures and they don't untap. We can essentially keep them tapped down forever with this if we roll well enough, and there's a lot of ways to re-roll in this deck, so this is just very solid. Echo Storm is one of the all-stars of the deck. This is absolutely fun in this deck. It's going to copy for each time you've played your commander this game, so we're going to get at least 1 copy of an artifact, but probably 2 if we've played Myra, and then after that, if we've recast her a bunch of times, this can be really ridiculous. You can get 3 or 4 copies. We can be copying our attractions or any of our other valuable artifacts, and we can also exile it with Myra onto an attraction and cast it even more later on, so this is just really solid. It's also worth mentioning that the copies trigger all of our Magecraft effects, so that's pretty good too. Faithless Looting is a really solid one for digging through our deck. We also want to be throwing stuff in the graveyard so we can exile it with Myra, so this pulls double weight in this deck. Detection Probe is a really solid way to get some information on our opponents, but mostly is there just to be a free spell that can trigger Myra, and then is really cheap to exile as well, so this can get the train going very easily and just draw us a card every time we cast it. Mana Geyser is a way to get some nonsense turns. If we exile it with Myra onto an attraction and then recast it later, we're going to be getting a lot of mana each time. It's going to give us a lot of fuel to pull off some big stuff. Mind's Desire is one of our finishes of choice. I just really like this card. It's going to trigger all of our Magecraft effects because the copies also count, but also it's just going to be really good if we've had a big turn with attractions where we've cast a bunch of stuff for free and then we play Mind's Desire. We can just keep the train going, and sometimes we can just kind of go off and play so many things in a turn. It's going to be fun. Ponder is one of the best cards in a deck like this. It can just come down for so cheap after Myra, open an attraction, and then we can just exile it with Myra and then keep doing it turn after turn after turn. Really good. It's the same with Preordain, just another Ponder kind of effect. Reckless Endeavor is a really good card since we have so many ways to re-roll dice. We can kind of guarantee that we're going to get some good results. So we're going to probably be wiping the board and creating a bunch of treasure tokens each time we cast this. Again, exiling this with Myra means that we can have a repeatable board wipe that's going to trigger every time we visit one of our attractions. That can be very, very strong. Relearn is another way to recycle and reuse our instants or sorceries that have hit the graveyard. Replication Technique I always love, but in this deck it's particularly good because we really just want to be making copies of attractions to go really nuts. At least that's what I want to be doing. So this is going to let us do that, and every time we cast it again, we're going to be able to copy it and give an opponent a copy. It's a fun card. Rousing Refrain is a really sweet card. It's going to add a bunch of mana and then it's going to exile itself and do it all over again. We can also exile it onto one of our artifacts, and each time we reroll we're getting a nice burst of mana. Saheeli's Artistry is going to let us copy one of our artifacts, so we're probably going to copy an attraction. And we can also get a copy of a creature. This includes opponent's creatures, so that's a really nice one to have. And if we manage to exile it onto an attraction and reuse it, it's going to be really sweet. Thunderwave is a nice little board wipe. It's got a bit of randomness attached to it, but we do have a lot of ways to re-roll dice, and this can be very strong in the right situation. For instance, we have an Offer You Can't Refuse, just some nice protection. We're going to need a lot in this deck because it's a bit fragile what we're trying to do. Big Score is a nice way to draw cards, get some treasures, and dump some cards into our graveyard that we can then reuse later. Chaos Swap is a nice little bit of catch-all removal. Consider it's similar to Ponder and Preordain and Detection Probe, just a nice little way to cantrip, draw some cards, and set up our future draws. Contact Other Plane is really good. We get to roll a dice, which we want to do in this deck, and we're going to be able to scry stuff if we're lucky, and it's just going to work really well to refill our hand. Counterspell is another bit of protection, a nice way to deal with our opponents and whatever they throw at us. Heel's Redirection is a really fun one. It's a nice piece of interaction that's also going to let us roll dice, and it's also going to let us recast the spell in a future turn even. If we roll well enough, we can cast it at any point while it remains exiled for free. That can be really, really awesome, and it's particularly good at countering expensive things, so I love this effect. It's so fun. Masterful Replication can be a really fun one if we want to have a super big turn with all of our attractions becoming a copy of one of our attractions, so you can make it be a copy of Information Booth and then roll, and if you draw a card you're going to be drawing like 10 cards or however many attractions you have. This can be really fun. It's also a very all or nothing way to maybe get all of your Myra triggers at once. Because if you manage to roll the amount you need for the specific attraction that all of your attractions have become, then all of those Myra triggers are going to happen at the same time, and you're going to get to cast a bunch of spells for free. Very all or nothing card, but super fun. Pongify is a nice bit of removal for our opponent's creatures. Same with Rapid Hybridization. Sublime Epiphany is going to do a lot of things in this deck. It can protect our deck with a counterspell effect, and then it can draw a card, it can bounce stuff. It can also create a token of a creature. This is a really good one to recast with Myra over and over because you're going to get a lot of value from it. Swan Song is going to protect our combo and our fragile pieces. Thrill of Possibility is another way to filter through our deck and draw some cards. Same with Unexpected Windfall. Wild Magic Surge is similar to Chaos Warp. It's another way to deal with problem permanents. And Will's Reversal is again going to protect specific pieces of our combo, and if we roll well enough we can also get a copy of a removal spell, which is pretty nice. So as you can see, our instants are mostly aimed at protecting all of our artifacts, which is understandable because we're super wide open with this strategy. Next up we have artifacts. Here are your mana rocks. As usual, please play mana rocks. They are really good and they're going to help you cast your spells. And then we have Blinkmoth Urn, which is going to be adding a bunch of mana for us in this deck with all the attractions we have open. It still adds it for our opponents, but we don't care about that. Darksteel Forge is there to protect our attractions from unwanted attention. It's really good if we can get it down early so we can feel pretty safe with our attractions other than with exile effects. Ebony Fly is a mana rock that's also going to let us roll some dice. That's pretty nice. Mirrorworks is one of the best cards in the deck. Just like in the Most Dangerous Gamer, we get to copy artifacts whenever we pay 2 after an artifact comes into play. So with all of our attractions coming in from playing spells with Myra, we can just get copies of them with this, which is really nice. Mizzium Transreliquate is not only difficult to say, but it's also a great one for copying our attractions, and it can even switch up which attraction it copies turn after turn, which is nice. Sculpting Steel is nice for copying our attractions. It just comes into play as whichever one we want it to be. We can also use it to copy any other good artifact on the battlefield. And Vexing Puzzle Box is a mana rock that doubles up as a search engine in this deck. We're going to be rolling so many dice that this can search up our Darksteel Forge pretty early, and once it does, we should feel pretty safe with our cards. For our enchantments, we have Barbarian class, which is going to let us re-roll all those pesky rolls, so it's going to make sure that we hit what we need to hit. Netherese Puzzle Ward is really good for drawing cards. We're going to be rolling a few 6s, hopefully that's what we want, and when we do, we're going to be able to draw a card off of this. In addition, it also lets us scry at the beginning of the turn, so this is really good in any deck that is rolling a bunch of dice. Priority boarding is going to give us a nice little bit of card advantage. Whenever we roll a high result with a die, we can just exile the top card of our library and play it that turn. We're only going to be able to do it once per turn, but that's still pretty good. And Storm the Bolt is going to be absolutely insane in this deck. It's basically Tolarian Academy, so this is an absolute auto-include if you have it. Finally, we're moving on to lands. We have Academy Ruins, which is great for recursion in any deck centered around artifacts. Desolate Lighthouse is going to let us dig through the deck and fill our graveyard, which are both things we want to be doing. Inventor's Fair is going to gain us a little bit of life, and later on it's going to let us search for an artifact, which are both things that we're totally up for in this deck. Minamo is a really good one for untapping our commander and getting to use her ability again. Silundi Isle doubles up as a spell. On the other side, it's going to dig 6 cards deep and try to find us an instant or sorcery. And War Room is there to draw some extra cards. And as with our Most Dangerous Gamer deck, here are the list of all the attractions I'm using. Feel free to change some of them. There might be some that you don't think are that good, or there might be some that you think that I've missed that you would like to add. Or maybe your playgroup lets you play with the non-legal ones. In any case, it's up to you. Add whatever you see fit. And there you have it. That has been our Myra the Magnificent deck tech. What do you think about this one? Do you feel as excited about it as I do? Are you dying to get your hands on these cards to put the deck together? Please let me know in the comment section below. I read all comments and respond to all of them too. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click like or subscribe. And if you really like it, you can maybe consider supporting me on Patreon, since I'm currently trying to grow the channel. The link is in the description below. And until next time, take care.